No.
You're far away at the moment. You were okay earlier.
Oh yeah, he was loud earlier.
Have you turned anything down?
Let me check.
Okay.
Okay. I guess you'll be, is it Nan? We haven't met or spoken. Is it Nan?
Me?
Nani.
Oh, nice.
Nani in Georgia.
Hi. I was told Nan with it when it's spelt with an I, and I said, is it a silent?
Okay.
I was told yes, but it's not a silent I.
Oh no.
So how do you pronounce it?
Nani.
Nani. Okay. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. How are you getting on with the sound, Chief? How you getting?
Okay, is that better?
That is better.
Absolutely. Right. You're saying that next on stage. Hopefully I'll just get through. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Garvey villages. Unlock the chains and keep well. Remedies and keys. This is part 7. So we can't believe that we're the 7th week in. So I hope you all are actually taking heed and taking taking in the information. Royston, I don't know if you'd like to go into what people need to do before I introduce Chief Montana.
Yeah, so I have a video to play on behalf of the chief before, which covers the libation. Okay, so I'll do that. What I want to say I haven't seen it, but if anybody's listening in or part of this call and they have a significant other beside them in the process, the invitation is if that other person can log on in their own right, if it's possible, from another space, because at some point in time, when I come on, I'm going to get you to talk to somebody that ideally isn't in the same room as you physically, in as much as that person you know or have known for some time. So if it's possible, then for that second person to log on from a different iPhone or computer, that might help. All right.
Okay.
So Chief, you ready for me to play that video? Yeah.
Yes. Ken, we haven't introduced Chief yet. Okay. Our first presentation is Chief Montana, and Chief Montana is apparently, I can say, we hand it over to Nomi, is residing in Ghana at the moment, and Chief Montana is going to be doing our libation for today via video. So he's going to go on after that to do his presentation. So if anybody wants any questions or asks any questions, please write it down and wait until after the presentation, and then you'll be able to put forward your questions. And also make sure you've got some water so you can hydrate yourself. So I say, Royston, is over to you, and then it'll be over to Chief Montana. Thank you.
Wrong clip. Start again.
For African people, nothing important happens without a libation. And so for this very important presentation, we begin by the pouring of libation. We pour libation first to our first ancestor, to that hidden one who, though hidden, manifests in all things as all things, that God, goddess idea in the universe by any and all names. To our first ancestor, we pour libation. Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the first people on this planet, mothers and fathers of all mankind, flashpoint of the human family. To those ancestors, libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the ones who first gave birth to the idea of civilization, knew we would need a form of governance, and they nurtured that idea along the Nile until it reached its zenith in Kemet. There they built these gigantic monuments as evidence of that great civilization, and they carved instructions on the walls of temples and tombs for us, so we would never forget. To those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because over time they put together all the tenets of civilization and they took those ideas and left the continent. They were the people of the first Exodus. They left Africa and went all over the world and peopled the world. To those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they did not sit on their laurels. They continued to improve, continued to evolve, and at each point of evolution, they again would leave the continent and settle and resettle the planet. They met themselves coming and going. To those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time, they found themselves the object of a forced exodus when they were kidnapped, shackled, cargoed, shipped out of Africa and enslaved in diasporas around the world. To those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to the ancestors left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, left to reinvent themselves, depleted of us, human resources. But they were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global myopia that ruptured the soul of a people as it ravaged a continent. To those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time they began to remember who and what they were. Because no matter where they had been dropped off, they still retained bits and pieces of who and what they were. They retained that African core that described them. They began to remember bits and pieces of a song. They began to remember lines from a rhythm. They began to remember dances that they did in ancient times. They began to remember those ancient drum beats that they now beat out on bare skin. And so to those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to them because they then began to teach each other. They began to resurrect and reconstruct that history and that culture. They became the new Africans wherever they were. They became the new teachers, preachers, archaeologists, the new singers, dancers, the new drummers, the new Jaliyah. They reconstructed that history and our culture and became new Africans everywhere. So to those ancestors we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation to those ancestors because they are the ones who pass that information on to us. And so we pour libation to those of you who will watch this presentation, those of you who are the recipients of that pieced together history, of that reconstructed culture. To you, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our children and those yet to be born, for they are the ones that you must teach. And you can only teach if you know the history. So to you who are learning the history and are passing on that history, and to our children who are learning that history and will pass that history on to all eternity, but they will call your name in all eternity. To our children we pour libation. Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
Shane.
Okay. Now that was a really good video, and it talked about libation. Excuse me, the background. The motorcycle. Give me 1 second. Maybe they're not leaving. Don't start. Maybe. Okay. Talk about briefly this evening is ancestral renewal and communication, and the pouring of libation is actually the foundation of ancestral communication. It is the foundation of ancestral renewal. And that video was a really good video because she talked about, from a broad perspective, the ancestors that we honor, the ancestors that we recognize, which is what we should do. But there's a component there that makes it more personal that's missing. And so really within tradition itself, that particular invocation would actually be an invocation in the context of a group. So what I want to talk about really briefly is doing an invocation within the context of a family. And that is where we start. We start there. And many times we start on this broad scale, which there's nothing wrong with that. But we must first recognize our bloodline ancestors, our direct ancestors, because they are the foundation in which we stand on. And if that foundation is not solid, then our lives is rocky. The lives and the way of being of our family is shaky, it's rocky. Because we're standing on something that's not adequate enough to support us, because we're not supporting our ancestors. So it is vitally important to do that. And I know that we're in a time where a lot of, especially people of African descent, are looking at tradition. And what I want to say is, before you get into any tradition, it is vitally important that you have an ancestral connection, that you know your ancestors and your ancestors know you. And the way that we do that is by simply the pouring of water. Because water is essential within the context of any ritual. Water is actually one of the most powerful elements on the earth. And many times we take water for granted because we look at water from the context of using it to hydrate ourselves, using it to bathe, using it to cook. And for many of us, that's the extent in which we really use water on a daily basis. But water is something that holds memory. The same water that you bathe in, the same water that you drink, is the same water that your ancestors drank and bathed in thousands upon thousands of years ago. And that water is still here. And so water is sacred. Water is very, very precious. And so I just want to show you all really briefly just how to do a quick invocation for yourself. And it's really simple, because all you need is a bowl or calabash, and you need water. Which I pretty much drank most of the water, but you need water. And that's it. You want to preferably use purified water, filtered water, alkaline water, that's fine also. And you want to, as much as possible, stay away from water out of the faucet. Because just like we, as human beings, we like things of quality. Our ancestors like things of quality also. And so why would we cheapen them? And so it is traditional to give like purified water or the highest quality water, not just any water that you want to give, okay? And to do an invocation, it's really, really simple. And this would be a personal invocation for yourself. And it's vitally important to connect with your ancestors on a daily basis or as much as possible. And not just, like a lot of times what we have learned is to give ancestral reverence. And we'll say thank you. But we don't understand that our ancestors actually serve three primary purposes. And that is to help us to navigate through life, help us to fulfill our purpose in life, and to help us to manage and govern our relationships. Those are the three purposes, the three primary purposes that the ancestors serve. And when those three things are actually being fulfilled by our ancestors, they will actually cover every aspect of our lives. And so our ancestors want to be put to work. They want to be useful. They're not necessarily here to be revered. They can be revered anywhere. They're actually here to do work for you. They're actually here to work in your life. They're actually here to have your life to be easy. And that's the beauty of ancestors. And a lot of times we don't know, which has our lives look upside down. A lot of times our families are filled with drama. I'm not drama, yes, drama. I'm gonna say trauma, but yes, drama and trauma. And that trauma is held. And it is our responsibility on this side to clean up our bloodline, to clean that trauma out of our bloodline. Because as our ancestors return, especially those ancestors who transitioned within the diaspora over the past 500 years or so, they were never given their proper burial rights. And so they are actually existing in the other world with trauma. Because when you're given your proper burial right, it's a cleansing process, and it cleanses that trauma. It cleanses that sickness, the things that we transition with and carry into the other world. That is why our families look the way they look. It is because as those ancestors return, they're bringing that trauma right back into the family. But if we do the job of cleaning up our bloodline, then when those ancestors return, they will return into this lifetime whole and complete. And then you will actually see the issues in your family begin to go away when that happens. Literally, especially once you cleaned up that bloodline. Because I have many students who will say there's a huge difference before they actually started doing ancestral work, and 2 years later, their families look totally different, completely different. Because what we have to understand is whatever burial rites they're giving our loved ones today are the burial rites of another group of people. Those burial rites, especially coming from a Christian context, you can't find those burial rites in the Bible. You can't find them there. And they come out of someone else's tradition, which is fine for them. Because every group of people, every race of people have their own tradition. And when we run around and we cremate our loved ones, that is a taboo from an African perspective. You should never burn your bodies from an African perspective. That is a European tradition, and it is perfectly fine for them because that comes directly out of their tradition. But it does not work for us at all. When we are buried, we need to be buried whole, not as dust. That is not who we are. We are a whole people. We're not dust. And we have to be buried that way. Anyway, I could talk about that all night. But really quickly, I want to briefly talk about doing an invocation. Now, as I said, all you need is a bowl and you need some water. That's it. And you just simply take your hand and just dip it into the bowl and just start flicking the water slowly. You don't have to grab a handful of water and start throwing water. You can, but you're gonna make a mess, I promise. And it does not matter where you do the invocation. That's why I came outside. It's actually getting darker than I thought it was gonna get dark, but nevertheless, that's why I came outside to demonstrate that it does not matter where you are. You do not have to be in some type of sacred space, because the moment you start to do an invocation and you flick that water, guess what you do? You create a sacred space where you're standing. You do not have to have a designated sacred space. You can go to your altar or you can go to your shrine. An altar and a shrine, they're not the same. I know sometimes we mix those words up and use them as one, but an altar is totally different than a shrine. They are not people at all. That's just a conversation for another day. But nevertheless, the moment you start flicking the water, you begin to create a sacred space. And as you flick the water, you begin to call the names of your ancestors, call the names of the ancestors that you know. And it does not matter what kind of relationship you have with your mother's side or your father's side of the family, because the purpose of it is to unite the family. That's one of the purposes. And in doing the invocation and calling both sides, that begins the process of uniting the family. That begins the process of cleaning up whatever it is that has you not like the other side of the family. Whatever is going on that side of the family that does not work, or whatever is going on within you and the side of the family that you're closest to that does not work, that causes the rift. Communicating with your ancestors, bringing them closer to you, actually begins to dissolve the rift. And so you call the names of all the ancestors that you know. And as long as you're speaking, you will be flicking water. And also, from a traditional perspective, when you are doing a prayer, you never, ever, I mean, ever, close your eyes. I know that in the West, we're taught when we pray, our eyes are closed. But from a traditional perspective, when your eyes are closed, your ancestors cannot see you when your eyes are closed. So your eyes are always open. You would never, ever come to Africa and go into any traditional setting and you have an elder doing a prayer and he or she has their eyes closed. You will not find it at all. And so as you flick the water, you call the ancestors that you know for your mother's side and your father's side. Then you would say to your ancestors, bring forth those ancestors that I know, but I have forgotten. And that will cover all of the ancestors that you just forgot about during the invocation, and all the ancestors that you knew before you came into this lifetime. And so that should bring forth all of them. And what I'm going to say next is extremely important, because the next thing you want to do is you want to say to your ancestors to only bring forth those ancestors who are clean, because there are some ancestors who are not clean. They have violated taboos. And for example, a huge taboo in tradition is suicide. To commit suicide is a huge taboo. And within Kali, I should have mentioned this earlier, my tradition, the name of my tradition is Kali, K-A-L-I. So within Kali, if one commits suicide, you are buried at the spot in which you have committed suicide. There are no funeral rites performed for you. You are buried and forgotten, because it is said that you become a bad spirit if you commit a taboo. And another taboo, really quickly, is one who has committed atrocities against nature. And what do I mean by an atrocity against nature? Is one who has violated nature in that they have destroyed nature. And as human beings, we are nature. So you can consider people who have committed mass murder, genocide against human beings. That is a taboo. Anyone who has committed suicide against the forest, not suicide, but genocide against the forest, that is a taboo. Anyone who's committed genocide against animals, you have people who go out and sport hunt. They will hunt just for a trophy. That is a taboo, because you are only to eat when it is necessary to eat. You are only to hunt when it is necessary to hunt. And if it is not for sustenance, then you must leave it alone. And so we have those people, which they have no clue, who have committed atrocities against nature itself. And so you don't want to filter that list, because we don't know all of our ancestors who have committed these taboos, who are not clean. And so let your ancestors do that part. And once you've done that, then you will stick your intentions. And your intentions are things like, why did you call them? What do you want? And you want to be able to tell them, of course you can say, I want to give thanks, but you want to send them on a mission. You want to give them a task to do. You want to, like, for example, what I do with my ancestors every day, every morning, is I create the context for my day. I know what I'm dealing with for the day, and I tell them to go out ahead of me and to create a context in this meeting for my success. And I'll give them some detail about the meeting, what the result is that I want. Whatever I'm doing throughout the day, I send them out before me to create a context for that. And then I'll call those ancestors who specialize in a certain field. Because sometimes I know that I'm going into a meeting and I have to call my grandmother. My grandmother, she didn't play at all. So if I know that I'm going into, for example, a meeting, and I know I'm up against some opposition, I will call her, because she will give me the language to speak that will basically defeat or extinguish anything that's coming against me. And I'll tell her to give me the language to speak, because she was beautiful with words. Now, she'll cuss you out, but she was beautiful with words. She knew how to put words together to make you feel like, wait a minute, what just happened? You know, when you walk away. And so you want to call those, so you want to create the context for your day on a daily basis. And you'll notice how your life will begin to shift. And for all of you who don't know what your purpose is, tell your ancestors that you've come to them to reestablish a tradition that has been lost, to create partnership. You can do that on the first time you do an invocation. You come to create partnership. And then you can tell them that you come to them because you are ready to fulfill your purpose. And they will literally begin to direct you in the direction to fulfill your purpose. Now, I want to tell you this. The moment you do that, you're actually calling for an initiation, because who you are today is someone who is ill-equipped, ill-prepared to fulfill your purpose. And you have to be molded and faceted into that person. But anyway, once you have finished saying everything you need to say, and remember, as long as you're speaking, you're actually flicking water. And once you've said all you need to say, you can end your invocation by saying Ashe. You can say Isa. Isa is the same as Ashe. It's just from a different ethnic group. You can say Amin, whatever you want to say to end it, you can. You don't have to say anything sacred to end it. You can just say, all right, that's it, that's all I got, and walk away. And so I wanted to briefly talk about that. And so now I'll open the floor for questions. So that is what we talked about today, is the foundation of ancestral connection and communication. If you do not have that, I promise you it's not going to work. But once you have it, you can actually, your life is beautiful and the lives of your family become beautiful. Especially if you're someone who is a matriarch or a patriarch of the family. Having a conversational domain around ancestors will transform your entire family, because you will know how to send your ancestors to be with certain relatives. You'll know how to use your ancestors on relatives who are kind of wayward. And there's a technique you can use to tell them to go and whisper in the person's ear and have the message occur to them as if it is their own thought. Because people are more apt to take action when they think they've come up with something themselves. And so anyone who has gone wayward and they need to come back home, you can actually send them that message and they'll come back home. Anyway, let me stop right there because I can actually, you can tell I can talk. So I'll stick a pin right there for now and take any questions that anyone may have.
Got
Thank you, Chief. I was distracted for that last bit. You talked about getting somebody to come back home. What was that? Yeah, can you repeat that for me, please? I'm sorry.
Yes. So say for example, there's a child in the family who's wayward. They've gone out and they've run away, or they're out in the streets. They're just behaving in a manner in which, you know, they may not have been raised to behave. There's a technique that you can use when you call your ancestors, especially when you have strengthened them. Because for most of our ancestors, they're in a weakened state because no one has actually done the things that are supposed to be done to maintain our ancestors. But you can actually tell them to go out and deliver a message to that wayward person. But you tell them to deliver the message and have the message to occur to them as though it is their own thought. Because when people come up with their own thoughts, or when they think it's their own thought, they're more apt to act on that, as opposed to it coming from an outside source. And so there's a technique that you can use where you can actually go out and send those ancestors on that assignment to do that. And then you tell them to we have a saying, because I'm from the South, I'm from the States, I'm from the South. We have a saying like being ridden like a rented mule. Mm-hmm. And so you know how hard people work rented mules. And so you can tell them to ride that person like a rented mule. Mm-hmm. And they will ride them and continue to press upon them and deliver that message until they react, until they come home. And that's all you have to do, is do that one invocation. And there's some other things, there's some specific candles that you need to give, but you can deliver that message or do that particular ritual and walk away. And you've done your job. Mm-hmm. And then you'll see within a period of time, they'll come home.
Okay.
And they'll come home ready to be received, not come home for a meal.
That's really important because one of the things we experience a lot of is what we call county lines, which is drug running, that a lot of our young people get taken away. And, you know, for days, family don't know if that young person will come back to them. So thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
For those who's just coming on, the Chief is in Ghana right now, and the natural sunlight that he started to speak with has gone down. So that's where we are. Any other questions?
Jens.
Hello.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the Chief, how soon can you call upon an ancestor after they've transitioned?
So traditionally, it would be 40 days. Because traditionally what we would do is there are burial rites that are performed, and the burial rites last for more than a day. For example, after the person transitions, and the transition is determined when it is confirmed that the person has transitioned. So from that day to the 7th day, there's preparation done, and then there's a series of ceremonies that are performed on that 7th day by the father's side of the family. And then you go another 7 days. And then there's another series of rituals and performances that are enacted by the mother's side of the family. Because you have to make sure that both sides of the family participate in taking that particular ancestor home. And basically what they're doing is they are calling Nawuni, and Nawuni within my tradition is the name for God. And so they're calling Nawuni to send those great ancestors who are already in the world of ancestors, to send them to get the person who transitioned and take them home. That's what those ceremonies are about. And as I was speaking about earlier, you know, we're actually being buried by someone else's tradition, and they don't come close to doing any of that stuff. Those burial rites, if you want to call them burial rites, are full of hope. But within tradition, there's no such thing as hope. There's no such thing as faith. Those things do not exist. There's only knowing. In the same way that you know 2 + 2 is 4. There's only knowing within tradition. You will never hear someone in tradition say, ooh, I hope this works, or I'm gonna have some faith. They actually know it, and they walk as though they know it. So those terms that we use are not African terms. Hope and faith are not at all. Because we never walk through life based upon hope and faith. We walk through life knowing. We know the sun rises and sets. We know that. We never hope that it does, or have faith that it does. We know it. Yeah. So yes, so 40 days. And there's some other ceremonies and rituals that are performed, but those are the 2 primary ones. And then after 40 days, the family comes together again, and they do a whole nother set of rituals on the 40th day. And then a year later, the family comes together again and does another set of rituals and prayers. And then it's done. But you can start communicating after about 40 days.
Can I ask if we haven't done this, because a lot of us have given into living in the West, we've given into the Western way of doing things. So a lot of us haven't actually done any of what you've just outlined. What can we do to pick up from where we are now?
Excellent question. Excellent. Well, I teach a series of ancestor classes. And the 3rd class in that series is a class that is centered around what's been coined as ancestralization, or or ancestralizing your ancestors. And that is giving them their proper burial rights. And so my elders they've taught me the rituals that need to be performed for groups of people in order to take our family or families. I do it with my students in groups. I haven't done it, it's coming up. So we do it in groups. And so this ritual will take everyone who's participating in the ritual, take all of their ancestors on their mother's side and their father's side, and send them home. And so that's what we're doing to address that particular issue. Because it's a 3-day process, so it's not like one day. Because there's a totally different ritual that is performed for children, or for the babies, as we call it. And the babies are considered as any child that was aborted, any child that was miscarried, any child that died at birth, or any child that transitioned while they were still suckling. Those are considered babies. And so there's a different ritual that's performed for them.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Greetings, Chief Montana. This is Sister Doctor here. As I'm listening to the rituals that are performed, my thoughts go to those of us Africans who are living in the diaspora and the family circumstances that are affecting us. And there are two main questions I have as a result of that. One is linked to, you said on one day the father's family performed the required ritual, and on another day the mother's family performed the required ritual. So my first question is, what happens when the father is either not known or the mother is not known, or there's some kind of circumstance of that nature? Because some of our children are being raised in environments or in circumstances or dynamics that are not a village. So, you don't necessarily have both sides of the family there. That's the first question. The second question is linked to the current circumstances that we live in to do with this pandemic, where families are not being allowed to access their loved ones and perform rituals in the traditional sense. So do you have any thoughts about those two scenarios?
Yes, I do. So I'll address your first question. When you perform a ritual to ancestralize your ancestors, you do not have to know the mother's side or the father's side, because there's certain language that we'll use to address that. Because your ancestors know that you, for example, that someone may not know their father's side. They know that. They're clear about that. And so one of the things that we do is we will call upon the ancestors of the side of the family that they know and tell them to go and get the father's side. Or you can tell them to go and get one person from the father's side and bring them. And then you tell that person to go and get his family. Go and gather all of the ones who have not been properly ancestralized. And that's how we address that.
Question.
And it doesn't matter if you're adopted. It doesn't matter if that's your someone's circumstance. If for example, if someone has been adopted, that means that they actually have 4 sets of ancestors, 2 on the mother's side, 2 on the father's side. Because there's something just very special that's almost magical that happens when someone is adopted. It's the same thing that happens when a family comes together through marriage. Because when you're married, your spouse's ancestors become your ancestors. They do not stay divided. It's something that happens that brings them together. The same thing happens during adoption.
Chief, questioners ask,
yes.
What if you do not know any of your ancestors' names?
That is perfectly fine. If you do not know your ancestors' names, you can just say ancestors, because they know that you don't know them. They're very well aware of that.
Okay.
And you'll be amazed at what happens. I've had students in that same situation who did not know any of their ancestors, and all of a sudden, when I say all of a sudden, it's relatively speaking, I'm not saying like the next day, but with over a given period of time, something happens and their family members that they don't know start showing up. Because your ancestors want you to be whole and complete, to be whole and nail for that to happen.
Could you just repeat that?
The issue is,
Connection just went. So could you repeat what you said, please?
yes, I will. So even if you don't know any of your ancestors, you just say, ancestors, come. And they will come because they know that you don't know them. And when you begin to communicate with them over a given period of time, your family members that you don't know will begin to show up somehow. It happens differently for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will actually get a phone call out of the blue. And I had someone, their best friend was friends with a cousin that because they didn't know their family. And they met the person, they started talking, and next thing you know, things started making sense.
Yes.
And so there's a host of ways in which that'll happen. But during this process, the most important thing is to practice patience. Not patience in the way that we think of patience. A lot of times we think of patience as waiting. We get waiting and patience confused. They are not the same. You know that you are waiting. You know that you're exercising patience when in all circumstances and situations you're being with life how it is and how it isn't. That's how you know that you're exercising patience.
Could you repeat?
You know that yes. So you know that you're exercising patience when you are being with life how it is and how it isn't. And life always is how it is, and it always isn't how we expect it to be. That's why people would say life isn't fair. Well, no, life is being what it is. It's just not unfolding the way you want it to unfold, which makes it unfair. Mm-hmm. But life is just life. And so I'm giving you an example. This is my favorite example. Say you go to your favorite restaurant. You walk in and you go to the host station and you make your reservation and they say, oh, the wait is an hour. And then, we'll sigh, but our favorite dish is on that menu, so we'll wait. And if you are going to check where you are on the list every 5 minutes, you are actually waiting. You are not being patient. But we will say, I patiently waited. No, you didn't patiently wait. You just waited. But when you allow life to be as it is and how it isn't, you won't think about going up to that host station. You just sit there and just enjoy whatever life is giving you and just be with it. And then they'll call your name at some point and you go. Because the reality is, if they're going to call you in 45 minutes, whether you go up there 20 times or not, guess what? They're going to call you in 45 minutes. Does not matter.
Yeah.
And so through this process, it is extremely important to practice patience in a way that we don't know we have the capacity of exercising. We can't even think of a way to exercise a greater level of patience for most of us. Because a lot of us think we are patient. Mm. But we have absolutely positively no clue. Just come to Africa and sit and wait for an elder. And it's 106 degrees outside and you're just sitting out there in line with 10 other people, just waiting. 1 hour passes, 2 hours pass, 3 hours. Next thing you know, you've been there for 7 hours and the elder comes out and says, I'm done for the day. Come back in the morning. And everybody, except the people in the diaspora who are there, They just get up and say, okay, and they go home. We will sit there and be like, wait, what? Oh, no, I got here at 8 this morning. So we think like we need to be seen. And we sat there the entire time being totally impatient. We just sat there waiting. And how I know that we sat there and waited is when the elder came out and said, you know what, I'm done for the day. Because in waiting, there's no consideration. In patience, there is consideration. Because you can consider that this elder has been divining and performing rituals for the last 7-8 hours. He or she has to be hungry and tired. That's what patience affords you to do, is to have consideration, to have compassion, and to be able to extend grace and mercy. But waiting is a very selfish act.
Thank you very much for clarifying. That's really made
Okay.
a lot of things clear for me, and hopefully it's made clear for a lot of other people. And on your closing note,
Okay.
how would you like to close?
Can I interrupt? Auntie Jean? There was a second part of Dr. Sandra Richards' question regarding the current pandemic and burials not happening.
Oh, yes. So with the current pandemic, geez, I can go a lot more in detail with that maybe at another time, but I'll just make it as brief as possible. I'll see if I can sum it up in about 30 seconds. With the current pandemic, it's unfortunate that we're not able to see our families. We're not able to be with our family members during this time. And when they transition, there is a ritual that can be performed to send your ancestors who have not been ancestralized to go and get them so they can be with family. Go and get them and talk to them and tell them what has happened. Because for some of our family members, things happen very quickly. They went into the hospital coughing, and by the next day, it was over. That's very quick. And so there's a ritual that we can do to actually send those ancestors to them and to get them and take them amongst their family so they can be with them. So that's the Cliff Notes version of it. So I hope that answered your question.
I'd like to ask, how important is it to have a divination done?
A divination, I laugh because a divination is extremely important. I can hear my elders' voices in my head. A divination is extremely important because a divination tells you basically your present, past, and future. However, the difference between a divination and a reading is when you get a reading, for instance, with crystals or tarot cards, the majority of the time, it is a reading that gives you information, and the information is accurate. It's accurate. And you get the information and you kind of go away. With a divination, you will get the same information. However, if there is an issue, an elder can give you a prescription to either enhance the issue, meaning that if it's seen that you're going to get a promotion at work, I don't know, I'm just making that up. An elder can give you a prescription so that you maximize all the benefits of that promotion. You get the highest salary, the highest benefit package, all of that stuff. Or if it's something unfavorable, like we may see that there is an accident that you're going to be in, we can give you a prescription to either have you to avoid the accident altogether, or if the accident happens, because sometimes accidents need to happen, not for you, but for somebody else. You're just a passenger, to minimize the impact on you so that you walk away whole, just as whole as you were when you actually got into the automobile, something like that. And so divinations are very important. They're extremely important. I have divinations done multiple times a month. And it's just primarily for me, it's based on the nature of work that I do. That's why I get them done so frequently. But I have my elders to do them all the time. And so divinations are extremely, extremely, extremely important. They're very important. They're vital. From a traditional perspective, people will get divinations throughout the month just to check to see if everything's okay. Okay? So that's that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Be able to be us for the duration, so people can who's got more questions can ask you later on. Chief?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was absolutely brilliant, eye-opener, and I learned a lot. I hope everybody else does. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We're moving on to our next presenter now. Somebody who you know, I'm sure all of you do. His name is Royston John. And Royston John, where I find you now, is a business coach. And he's also the Garvey Village chair. And I'm going to hand the screen over to Royston John, and he can introduce himself and also tell a little bit more about himself and what he's actually going to be doing. Yes, what I was going to be doing. Sorry. Royston, the screen is now yours.
Okay. Thank you. Greetings all. Thank you for coming on today and for continuing to be part of our journey as we work our way through this plandemic, as Dr. Mumbai calls it, and others have called it. And so I want to do something that will be interactive with you, which is around looking at our leadership and strengthening our leadership in this time. I did make a shout out earlier that if you are in the same space as a second significant other and you would prefer to engage with somebody different for a change, then you need to log on with another computer somewhere in another room so that you'll get somebody that you haven't spent the last 24 hours beside to communicate with. If you can't, then that's fine. You will end up doing work as a three. So who am I? I'm a business coach. I've been business coaching for the last 20 years. I'm self-employed in that capacity. I've worked with people at the very top of their game and people at various stages of life and development and journey. I've worked with families, the mom, the dad, the children, and at various levels. I have repaired relationships, working with just one half of that equation. My youngest client was a 7-year-old that I worked with in a primary school over a period of 3 months to help him integrate into that school and education system. And so the whole spectrum of business I deal with in terms of saving organizations from bankruptcy to having organizations flourish and to go on to additional success. In addition to that, for the last 18 years, I've done equalities and unconscious bias training, and I have easily worked with, probably approaching nearly 20,000 people, around about half of that number working with young people in schools and institutions, and the other half working with people in organizations and across communities. So my passion is people, and I would say unashamedly, I get out of bed each day because I believe I'm contributing and making a difference to my world. And, every day I go to bed, and I go to bed well tired and exhausted, knowing that I've done my best each day. So here I am. So I'm here, you're there. We are experiencing something that we would classify as new and different. This hasn't happened on a global scale before in terms of the lockdown. Pandemic has happened, but not in terms of the lockdown that we're experiencing. And in any event, it's all new for us. So we are stuck indoors, and we have whoever we have within our space. And one key thing that we are about and seeking to do is to survive, and to work out how to survive, work out how to coexist, alongside another. So I talk about leadership, and every single human being in any given moment in time is in leadership, is in a leadership role. You make a decision where you go with that leadership, whether you enact that leadership, but you can't not be in leadership. And I've got a colleague that says that even if somebody's in a corner of a room sleeping, that they are contributing to what's going on in the room, right? Because there's a conversation going on. The moment that person wakes up, the conversation changes, all right? So they are contributing. And even a baby, and I'm proud to say my 6th grandchild was born on Tuesday this week. So I'm really kind of excited about that. And I've got 3 boys, and he's now made it 3 girls, and he's now made it 3 boys. So the number is even. But even that baby is in leadership. When that baby opens its mouth and cry, every single person, attention is drawn to that baby. And that baby is asking for something. And we are brilliant at interpreting what that baby wants or needs. So we have those innate skills to be able to interpret. And we sometimes forget that alongside another adult, we forget the language of communication and being able to understand each other well and better. So I just want to get you into pairs in breakout rooms to do a little exercise that gets you to look at you and your leadership, and to really examine what that leadership looks like. And I'm going to share with you a screen. And there's an invitation that for you to take a picture of that screen. And taking that picture of that screen allows you to take those questions into your room and your space. So we're looking at 3 primary things. What's my primary identities? So I could be a man, a wife, a daughter, a sister, husband, mother, father. In my identity, it gives me leadership strength, and this allows me to do a number of different things. And what I've put there are just examples. It allows me to care or provide or protect, to support my partner, to educate, to play, to teach, all of those things from the place of my leadership strength. And what happens in leadership, there are also moments of leadership challenge. So the same identity represents a challenge because I get angry, and from a masculine place, my anger can look ugly and impact adversely on my partner and my children and the home and so on. But I get angry perhaps because in that moment I'm less in control and awareness of what my leadership is and how it looks. I might be challenged because I'm unemployed, or I'm tired today, or I don't feel supported. And and I'm stuck in this house and it's noisy. So there are various reasons that could trigger that. Those are aid memoirs. Come up with your own conversations and dialogue about what's true for you. And the more you can make it true for you, the more you'll get out of that process of working alongside another. So I hope everybody's taken a picture of this screen now, because I'm going to take it away. And if you haven't, let's just trust the process that the partner you're working with has got a picture on your behalf. Right? So I'm going to put you in groups, and I'm going to give you about 6 minutes each person to have that conversation, and wherever that conversation goes, whatever that conversation looks like, to have that conversation. And then we'll get you back and we will share, not from everybody because there's a significant number, but we'll hear from some people what you learned about yourself in that process. It's great to speak about what the other person has said or done, but what have you learned about yourself? as the significant thing from that exercise. So in a moment, you'll see an invitation come up at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that invitation, it will take you into a Zoom room where I will communicate with you, telling you when it's time to switch from yourself to the other person and giving you notice about the time to come back. So thank you, good luck, enjoy your conversations.
Have you?
No, they're coming.
Okay.
They're coming.
Yeah, see 25 now.
They're coming.
Is that one more to come, is it? There was
Maybe
6.
maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, welcome back. I'm sorry if you didn't get a partner or you didn't get a partner on time and things like that. So what we're finding out is that if you're on a phone, the message to go into that chat room may not be quite prominent. So we have to learn how to find those messages on Galaxies and iPhones. Okay, so hear from a couple of people, what was that like to do, to go away and have a conversation with somebody, perhaps might be somebody you already know or somebody you're meeting for the first time, and to talk about yourself. What was that like? Somebody would like to speak, indicate. If I can't see you visually, then
Self to
yeah, I found it was a good experience to talk with somebody that I haven't met yet, and it kind of brings out the you know, the idea of, you know, leadership and the challenges.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was it's a nice little practice.
Okay. And what was it like to explore the question for yourself, George?
It was good in the sense that I was doing it from experience.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the experience of what I have done so far to date,
Okay.
and just to be able to convey that to
All right.
the person. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Doctor.
Yes, sir. It was actually very good to talk with Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And for myself, the identity, because we have so many identities, the identity I spoke from is that of being a sister in service.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of challenged me because I've not asked myself that question before in terms of leadership.
Right.
So it was good to go through that, and we actually went backward and forward, and it was really useful. The challenge for me was the same as the strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the strength I thought was that I care enough to do something.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that you are, of course, at risk of giving and giving. And Dawn asked a really good question. You know, I won't tell you what the question was because she can share what the question was. But it was good. It was good.
Okay. Thank you. One more person. I got Georgia on my mind. Do you want to say, what was that like? You're over there, we're over here, and you spoke to somebody, right?
Yeah, greetings. Can you hear me, Royston?
I can.
Okay. Hi. I was actually talking to George.
Yeah.
I think I'm reading, certainly it was George. And yes, we well, certainly I think when I mentioned about Marcus Garvey, I think George did say he knew who he was. It's
Right.
just, we kind of like had a short talk around the whole meaning of leadership.
Yeah.
Because the word in itself presented a challenge for me because I don't see myself as a leader per se.
Okay.
But I recognize it's important to have, as Marcus Garvey would say, confidence in yourself, because with confidence you've won even before you've started. But if I make reference to Marcus Garvey and his definition of leadership, he would say that in order to be a leader suggests that you must have followers. But anyway, for the sake of your exercise,
yeah.
I identified as Jamaican single female, and having that identity, albeit born in the UK, has given me the opportunity to be educated about the best of Jamaican culture. That has then empowered me to be a community activist. That then gives me the opportunity to share that knowledge within my respective Jamaican community and beyond that. Here in London, for example, where I am in the north, and London in general. And then, of course, the important aspect of your exercise, you wanted us to explore how does our identity represent a challenge.
Yes.
And that was kind of mega for me, in the sense that one would think that, given that Marcus Garvey is the first national hero of Jamaica, every Jamaican would be well educated about, you know, what his philosophy was in terms of African unity. But that isn't necessarily the case. So that's the challenge there. And it's not just Jamaicans, it's Black people, again, in general, so to speak. They don't always...
Tell me about you, my dear. Tell me about you. Tell me about you, not people.
Well, with me, that's the thing. As I say, I don't see myself as a leader. I see myself as someone who's passionate and who has got a lot of energy and enthusiasm in respect of Jamaican and African culture, and learning from teachers that are leaders in that area of African identity, that has impacted on my personality as someone who wants to learn about the wisdom of, you know, whether it's listening to what was said earlier on about ancestral invocation and so on. But yeah, primarily because I'm of Jamaican birth, on my father's side, Jamaican culture is my first focus. So about myself, the strength is that Jamaica has a rich, not just musical culture, but historical culture, and Marcus Garvey being a major influence on shaping my thinking. The challenge is, how do I share that good news with the rest of my community? And so it's great to know that there are people in the community that know more than me about that.
Okay, so I'd really like you to explore, going forward, your role as a leader when you are following someone else in leadership.
Wonderful.
Because each person is responsible for making a leadership decision. Do I support you? And how do I support you to be the best that you can be? All right. And we'll do that with a 2-year-old child.
Oh.
Yeah, as well as another adult.
Break that down again for me, because I didn't have that pictured in my mind.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it to you. So your role as a leader is how to support the leadership of someone else.
Okay.
And that person in leadership could be a 2-year-old child. And you have to work out, how do I support that 2-year-old child to be the best leader that they can be? So I'm making a leadership decision to support that child, just as much as I would make a leadership decision to support another adult.
Okay, I can give you an answer immediately.
Hold on a second. No, don't. Please don't. Please don't.
Okay.
Please don't. I want you to take it away and reflect on it.
Right. Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
You know, we can connect another time. I'll put my...
Oh, I see. Okay.
I can put my email details up there, and I've got one eye on time. I invited Nani to speak from Georgia. So
yes. Well, I hope that was useful, and I hope I gave at least some of the kind of answers that you would have thought. Okay,
thank you. Thank you. Nani.
It was a great conversation. I spoke with Dave and had an opportunity to share myself with Dave, and he did the same. I was clear that, you know, just as that my identity as, I almost said leader first, my identity as a leader gives me leadership, but I've had to consider some of the roles that I'm in, and so caregiver and facilitator and nurse is still, you know, the way that I've led, you know, in my life. So it gives me strength and it allows me to care for people, but it's and tend to people and support people. And it's also the challenges that I come up against as well, with maybe becoming overwhelmed with having to be present with a lot of people at a lot of times who may be in need. And so,
thank you. I'd love to have a richer conversation, but time don't permit.
Sure.
So thank you all for what you shared. And if you want to continue that conversation or dialogue with me, I will put up my details, Chief Montana details, and Sister Dr. Sandra Richards details that will come up in a moment. So what we intend to do now is to have a little break. There is a video clip that'll be playing for that 9 minutes. So you can follow that, you can make yourself a cup of tea or whatever you need to. And thank you. And when we come back from that video clip, it'll be time for Sister Dr. Sandra Richards.
Wasn't you going to do a quick summing up?
Summing up, I don't know if I want to sum up, but to say that every single one of us are in a leadership decision always. Yeah, whether I lead from the front, whether I lead from the side, whether I lead from the back. And in any setting that I'm in, there are, put a collective of people together, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everyone has a different role in that setting. And my leadership intelligence informs me how best to support the other 3 people in terms of their leadership. Because if I support their leadership and they support mine, we have harmony. If my leadership is in conflict with their leadership, we have discord. And being able to be in the same space together with discord is challenging and makes the clock go very slowly. The chief was telling us about time and waiting, waiting with patience, so our leadership is about, when a baby takes the first step, we all go coo, and we hold that baby and we enable that baby to walk across the room at however long it takes. But when they get to about 4 or 5, we say, come on, hurry up, you do this quicker. Yeah, and we forget the pace of that person may not be as fast as our own. So thank you for time, and thank you for allowing me to engage with you. And hopefully there'll be more conversations afterwards. Okay. And I had another question to put into the arena, but time don't permit. So
thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Royston. Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to play. I'm going to have a little break. I'm going to mute everybody and expand.
We're not hearing anything.
I was just about to say there's no sound.
Okay. You're not hearing.
Oh, and I like this as well. I like to say.
I'll be back. And everybody should be muted.
I muted myself to say that I couldn't hear, and
okay.
Yeah, I like what this woman says, so I like.
Okay. This. You will hear it. You will hear it.
I hope so.
You will hear it.
She's got a very good message.
Absolutely, you will hear it. Okay, let's go again.
But on a serious note, to the extent that black relationships have survived as they have, what say you about that 400 years later?
It is amazing that black relationships have lasted for 400 years. They lasted this morning. They're also going to last tonight, and you may not even know the person to whom you will have the relationship with. But they do tend to go over. Relationships do go over like that. And as we move into what has happened to this, I know that our relationships sometimes really reach a low ebb. That's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, How to Find and Keep a BMW, a Black Man Working, that was spelled out in there. This is very serious. Because our relationships didn't start yesterday or last week. It also started 400 years ago when those 19 persons were here. And I want you to remember something very important that one of our by any means necessary power brokers told us, and that was Malcolm X. He said, if we can only remember that you didn't land at Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on you. And it's very essential that we kind of keep this in place. And knowing that these are the things that happen, then we have to move more to change it. See, we have a system that would not like to see black males and black females together. They would not like to see that happening at all. Because once we come together, they understand the power of the strength of the black woman, the queen of the universe. They know that, her strength. They also know the power of the black male, the warrior. If you would turn him loose, he will protect also his family and things that need to be done. And because they understand that if our relationships are together, then they will lose. But if our relationships are torn up, then we can forever be treated in certain ways by the oppressors. That's why they gave us something called integration, which is nothing but the illusion of inclusion. They gave us this. Actually gave that statement. And when they gave that statement, it meant that they could go right into your homes. They went into the black homes now, the powers that be, and told us that you cannot discipline your children anymore. And if you discipline your children, you will go into jail. It's this kind of thing they told us. Now, this is amazing that, you know, the black parents who in Africa, that was out of the question. Some social worker come in there saying you can't discipline your children, the social worker would disappear. As you all know, this kind of thing would go on. You would be sitting in a place like this, and all you had to do was act up and do something wrong, and all your mother had to do was to glance in your direction. Y'all remember that? And you remember that the glance meant, don't let me have to get up and come over there. And every once in a while in the black family, there was a fool who would challenge the glance. And if you could get home over the foot, over the ironing cart, over whatever, you were sent to the backyard to get something off the peach tree. And if you brought something in that was too short, God forbid that you would do something like that. But then it got so terrible in frightening us. This is why we got to take this back. And this is the best part of our action plan, is to reclaim the minds of our children. Because then they went into the public schools and took discipline out of there. So when we acted up in there, they put our boys, our black men, into something called special ed classes. As you know, those special ed classes are nothing but holding cells until they can go to the state prison. But this is what they did. And then, the one thing that they knew, that if we can put them in prison, if we can have them convicted for a felony, then once they get out of prison, they cannot get a job. Because of that, they cannot get the job. And then if they happen to eke out and find a job, then they have to pay taxes on a job, yet they cannot vote, and I call that taxation without representation. That's what we're looking at. And if one of the things that we would learn to do, they did a grand thing when they took that discipline away from us, because when they made our parents afraid to discipline the children, then what happened? We found out that the teachers were afraid of the principals were scared of the superintendents was scared of the school board was scared of the parents were scared of the children, and the children ain't scared of nobody. statement, the reason why we're so pleased to have the covenant, it makes all of this type foolishness stop. It's going on under Angela Glover in San Francisco. It's all over the country, and they're all saying we finally have a movement where we can take back over the minds of our children. And the first thing we got to take over, the covenant taught us that we do not have to have black leaders anymore. It told us because everyone in this room is empowered to be a black leader. Everyone in this room. Because see, right now, these people that you're calling black leaders are not what they used to be with Marcus Garvey's day. They're not what they used to be back in the days of W.E.B. Du Bois or Martin Luther King. Those were the people that got us together and planted a strategy, and we're not looking for fame. But today's black leaders, I'm afraid, have become leading blacks. And don't ever confuse leading blacks with black leaders. Tell you why you don't do that. One of the reasons you don't confuse them, black leaders are chosen by you. They're chosen by the people they're going to lead. They're chosen by us. But let me tell you about the leading blacks. The leading blacks are chosen by the media. Leading blacks are chosen by ABC, all broadcasting Caucasians.
Should I stop her or let her go?
Leading blacks are also chosen by NBC. Nothing broadcasting but Caucasians. And the rest are chosen by CBS, the Caucasian broadcasting system. And when you allow leaders to be chosen by the media that's owned by the corporations, when you get ready to change your lives, when you get ready to demonstrate, when you get ready to march, when you get ready to come to the covenant, when you get ready to endorse and make Tavis one of our next elected officials, but what happens? You must take the time to carefully watch and see what the leading blacks are doing, because that's when the leading blacks sneak into the door to the corporations, and they will tell the corporations, oh, we know how to go and put them down. We know how to get you some real affirmative action Negroes to come in here and work. We know how to do that. But at the end of the day, the leading blacks lead the corporations, and the leading blacks have gotten paid while we have gotten played.
What happened to Royston? Yes, that was a clip from, is it Julia Hare? Her name is, and the actual clip was from, is it Travis Smiley, and one of his presentations. So I don't know what's happened to Royston, but Sister Sandra Richards is going to be up on our presentation. A presenter is going to be coming up next, and Sister Doctor, are you emoji?
I'm here. What? Okay, Royston's back.
Okay. So, Sister Dr. Sandra Richards, actually living in Barbados, and she's very much into empowerment and a very active act in the community. So Sister Sandra, Sister Dr. Sandra Richards is now yours, my sis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do is something I've not done before. So first of all, I'm working with the support of Royston, who is going to ensure that my screen is representing what I want to say. Excellent. And just so that we know what's happening, I have to have some remote control. But I want to, first of all, just say thank you. You know, thank you to you all for creating this platform for us to get to know each other. I think it's really important that, especially in times like these, that we know who each other are. And anyone from our community will know that sometimes we don't even know what each other's names are. We know what the street name is, but we don't know each other. So this process that I'm going to go into right now, I'm inviting you to watch me or witness me introduce myself. And I'm going to encourage you to introduce yourselves as well in the chat room, in the chat bit where you just type. So I'm literally going to do what I call amplify my utterings. I'm going to go through a process of sharing and ask you to participate by writing in the chat room. I have quite a few slides to go through, so I'm going to suggest that we start now. I'm hoping everyone can see the screen, and I do believe I will be able to have some level of control over this, although I can't see Royston, I can't see what I'm supposed to see in terms of that invisible hand.
You should have your mouse working.
It's working perfectly.
Right.
But anyhow, let's just go through the
okay.
slides.
Bottom left-hand corner.
Right.
Yeah, there should be. You'll see two little arrows there.
I am not seeing two little arrows. I'm not seeing two little arrows there.
Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. You can.
No, I can see an invisible arrow. I think that might be yours.
Yes. Or use the keyboard.
Okay. All right. So, am I moving the slides along then, Royston?
Yeah. It's all yours.
Excellent. Right. So I'm literally going to think and speak into this process and ask you all to just witness this process and make your comments in the chat room. So, I am Sister Doctor, and this is an awakening. So I'm pressing my thing, and it's not moving the screen along. I think, Royston, you will just have to. You may have to. Oh, hang on. Let me just see if I can do this from here. We rehearsed this, so this should work fine. But it's not working, Royston. It's not letting me do anything. Okay, let's try this now. Have I got it? Yeah, that's cool. Right, so just to introduce myself, I am locating myself as the center of this conversation. I am going to suggest that you do not attempt to read every slide. There'll be too many words on some of the slides. So I'm literally using the slides to prompt my conversation, but I'm sharing the slides with you for those of you who prefer to see something. So I am not vain. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that term vain, but I am not vain, and I am not the other. The other is the other. And this hopefully is understood by you all, because when we were speaking, when we were hearing a presentation from the chief, he was using that kind of, it is what it is. So the other is the other. We are the center. I am because we are. We have a common unity. We have a lot in common. The context within which I speak is recognizing that I am an African. Whilst I don't live north, south, east, or west, or even in the interior, I live in the 6th region. The African Union declared that the diaspora was the 6th region of Africa. That's where I live. And as I said, you're invited to journey with me. So these amplified uttering processes is something that I usually do in person, and I usually have a little bit more time, but I'm trusting that if I speak swiftly, I will get through all of my slides. And my slides, some of them are just pictures, so we don't have to linger on them. But just to let you know that amplified utterings is a process that I have been using for quite some time to help people utter the things that they think. Because sometimes we pause if we think we can't speak the Queen's English. So let us just utter out loud. My title, SisDr, is because I am an academic, I'm a doctor, but I'm a sister first. I belong to a community, I have a family, I have an African family. The name that I was given was Sandra, and this is my way of introducing myself. Sandra means helper of mankind, I understand. So I have not changed that, although I am told the day I was born. So I have African names that are bestowed upon me, and I've also been fortunate enough in my initiation to be given names. But I hold on to SisDr as a very important way of locating me. When I hear that, I know that I'm on duty. This conversation will be culturally sensitive, and it will tell you who I am and where I went, because I have been in exile. African-centered means that we are the mainstream. When we talk about the mainstream, we often are talking about other people, but I think we are the ones we are waiting for. Other people are not coming. There's no one coming to save us. We are the ones that will make the difference. I subscribe to an alternative frame of reference, and these include some of those principles that are part of the Nguzu Saba, Ma'at. I subscribe and promote the idea of a rites of passage, and I believe that we are humans having spirit having an earth experience. We are gods and goddesses, and we should speak to one another in that way. We should recognize the divinity in one another. We should hold each other in high esteem. So when I speak to my companions, I refer to them as queens and kings. It's normal language for me because I recognize the divinity. Where have I been? I've been to Europe, I've been to the Americas, I've been to Caribbean, which is where I live now, and to Africa. I've met teachers and sat at the feet of wise ones. And this presentation will be punctuated with musical interludes. I have been on a self-imposed exile. Some 12 years ago, I was more active than I have been in recent times. I decided to retreat to also ensure that when I was in service, I was offering a good service, a quality service. I realized that I was actually becoming quite tired, and I was also, I think, beginning to consider doing something that was quite risky. And I actually ended up being arrested on one occasion, standing up for the rights of us. I believe we need to speak out. And so the risk that we take, we have to take into account that we are connected. We are connected to our families and to various other ones. And if we know that what we're doing may need to be arrested, and we may need to spend some time, we should do that. So that's what I decided to do. But on a draw me out, I must say, there's a lot that's going on. We have this pandemic. We have some new freedom fighters and activists who are doing some great work. And I think that it's just time time for me to come back in and see where it is that I can lend my shoulder to the wheel. Not to repeat, but to do something that's different. And I want to acknowledge all the kings and queens and all the sister soldiers out there and the organizations. I'm naming a number of people in this slide, but I'm not going to necessarily speak all of their names. But I do want to mention Brother Dougie, and I do want to mention Sister Nkechi, because they have recently transitioned. And it's important, I think, for us to keep calling their names. You'll see that Brother Dougie and I have been trotting for a while, because when he transitioned, his hair was much longer and he looked different. So you can see that for quite a while we have known each other. I've also served alongside our very own Brother King Royston. We were part of an organization called The Space, and it was a sanctuary for those of us to be able to speak of issues that were affecting us. Many of us are being traumatized in the workplace, at home, and we go to therapists and various people who really don't understand us. So we spend a lot of time explaining to them who we are before we can actually get what we need. So The Space was a space where people who were culturally sensitive, African-centered, and trained and qualified would be in those spaces. So I returned to be alongside Royston, and I'm very excited about it. In fact, when we first saw each other, we disintegrated into, well, anyway. It's good to be here and good to see you, Royston. So my background has been largely connected with self-development, doing for self. And I have inhabited a number of titles and characteristics, and I wouldn't say personalities, but you know, you are in different states to deliver a number of things. So I am a counselor trained, coach trained, mentor, so on and so forth. Still holding on to the idea that I'm a sister. I am not separating myself, because I don't believe that there is separation. But I would ask that we are careful with ourselves. We should ask questions of our therapists and our counselors and all of the people who present themselves, especially the ones who are claiming money on our behalf in the name of BAME to serve our communities when they don't know our communities. They may say they're qualified, but qualified where? Certified by whom? Verified by whom? Experienced where? And authorized by whom? I think we must be comfortable asking those questions. And when we are honored, I think as someone said earlier on, we must recognize that we are the ones who should determine who is verified. So I have written a number of books. The journey was on the last screen. That is a workbook, a self-development workbook. And I've also written on education. And one of those things that I asked for in this publication was that we have difficult conversations. These conversations that speak to what happens to our children in the schooling system. We send our children to be educated, but they often come out schooled. And there are conversations that speak to a school to prison pipeline, but many of us don't want to talk about that. And many of us feel uncomfortable sharing with a teacher that we're not happy. So there are a number of things I've done, including developed a model for inclusive education. Meditation CDs, that's a strategy I use, and many of us do, but we need to be still and we need to go inside. So I'm showing some of what I have. Okay, there's someone. I think there's a message coming and something is going on with my screen. This is your screen, Royston? Something's happening with my screen. Okay, thank you. So I'm literally going to just go through some pictures here, because you'll see that I have been producing materials and offering techniques for us to do the work we need to do. We are traumatized. We are not taught about our own systems. We're not always able to have access to a Chief Montana or any other therapist to understand us. So we need tools so that we can do the work at home. So you will see that I have been journeying for a while. I've been taught by various scholars from near and far. This is Marimba Annie, and her work has informed me greatly. I've also been fortunate enough to sit at the feet of Queen Mother Jessica Huntley. I'm influenced by Francis Cresswell Singh, a number of people. Muta is Muta. Let me just say that. Magical, fearless. Dr. DeGroy Leary, who wrote about post-traumatic slave syndrome, have studied with her, have been influenced by Naim Akbar. I have sat at the feet of Malefi Kepe Asante, and I have included in this picture, this slide, is one with Sankara, because she's also out here doing the work. You will see there are a number of people that I have come before, walked alongside. Brother Ranoko Rashidi, one of our historians of huge merit, who is traveling and documenting the fact that Africans are everywhere in the 6 regions. I'm also saluting people that I have worked closely with, and in particular Sister Ngozi, who many people will know is the head of service for Sister Space, but we've also been involved in taking ones to Africa, because there's some things about Africa that you can't articulate, you have to experience. So you take ones to experience it. You facilitate the process, but you can't teach them. They need to experience it for themselves. I've been very involved in various events where we step into our majesty. Here I am just showing a couple of sisters who have been behind some of these events to help us to just get in touch, be comfortable with crying, be comfortable with not knowing, be comfortable. You'll see that I have been in front and behind the microphone. You'll see in the corner there is Brother Dougie. We've been trotting together for quite some time, and we're still trotting with me. Burning Spear, the music has healing, the drums, the rhythm, the energy that we know we can use, because we can put a certain track on repeat. We know what it does to us. So where have I been? I have been working in the Caribbean for the University of the West Indies, and I'm proud to say I've been doing that because the leadership of the University of the West Indies has a sensibility to the experience of Africans in the 6 regions. The Vice Chancellor is actually Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, and he has written a book called Britain's Black Death, in which he makes no apology for documenting in some detail the issues that are affecting us even now. So right now we're in a lockdown, and I would want to suggest that we open up, because this lockdown has many of us bewildered, feeling powerless, hopeless, anxious, and just not quite right. So in this state of being not quite right, we are likely to go to therapists or anyone who says that they can help us, but we must feel comfortable asking them who they are, where they got their qualifications from, and whether or not they are actually qualified to support us. So at this point, I have spoken quite a bit, and I will speak a bit more, but I just want to give us a moment to recognize that we have to get comfortable right now, capture our thoughts and comments in the chat room, and I hope you've been for a bladder and bowel release already, but we have to start breathing. We have to breathe by inhaling through our nose and exhaling through our mouth deeply, and becoming still enough to continue on this journey. During which time, there'll be a little musical interlude. We'll just take the 2 minutes, Royston, not for the entire time. I realize I'm short. I'm not hearing you.
I was respectfully muted.
Okay.
I will play this now. 1, 2.
Can't hear it.
Oh man. Okay, sorry guys. Bear with me 1 second while I rectify this in the situation. And you can't hear it?
No, we can't hear it at all.
Okay. Oh.
You can see the screen.
Things that make your body feel good. One little things.
Can't hear it?
Yes, you can hear it then.
Okay.
Make your body feel good. Oh. Things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the things I like though. Things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the thing we like though. Things that make your body feel good. Oh, things that make your body feel good. One little things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the thing we like though. Love it when the muscles start burn. Love it when the body start learn how to bend. Like to feel the pelvis oscillating, kundalini activate, and I'm transported to a higher state. Into the sea or into the dance around the yoga mat. In the office or in the vehicle or anywhere I'm at. Just monitor the hydration and surrender to the high vibration of the things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the things we like though. Things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the things we like though. Things that make your body feel good. Oh, things that make your body feel good. One of the things that make your body feel good. Oh, them the things.
Okay. The unforgivable interlude from the internet. I'm sorry.
No problem. Do you want to return to the PowerPoint slide?
Sure.
I'm just hoping that once you are witnessing this, we'll still hold that vibe of feeling good and breathing and being present. Okay, so I need to go back to the slide that I was on.
Are you going there? Or?
This is really quite something because we're not quite there yet, Royston. I think it's the one after. Yeah, we rehearsed this, so this is interesting. First time for me. Okay, so what I'm encouraging that we do, even in this situation we're in, is to open up and flip what is coming at us through our TVs and the radio and determine our own frames of reference. And our frame of reference is majestic, it's not a more. Unfortunately, we're often hearing how many people died and that the people who are more at risk than anyone else is us. I don't have control of this anymore somehow.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's come out of, you may just have to control this, I think. Oh, okay, I'll have a, okay. So what should have happened very smoothly is that we be encouraged to have our own frame of reference, which is majesty. Our frame of reference is that we are divine beings, that we come from kings and queens. Our reference point is not slavery. Our reference point is not this lockdown. Our reference point is royalty. So this is supposed to play Royston. And I can't hear you. That's okay. We're all learning in this new technology. So if I press it, will it play? You suppose? Okay, let me try. Not working. Can't hear you, Royston. Are you muted? Can everybody hear me? Can you give me, Auntie Jean, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
All right, thank you. So it's just that you can't play this, Royston? Is that what's happening here? You're muted.
Unmute yourself, Royston. We can't hear you. You're talking, but you're muted. Oh, you're telling me to shush?
Oh,
Lord. What's happening is that there's a battle for the controls, so I can't get to unmute myself whilst we've got the duality of control.
Oh, I see. I thought the cursor looked a bit drunk.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. Okay, so I can play the track now. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Can you hear? Okay.
Searching every corner of my mind, looking for the answers I can't find. I have my reasons and life has its lessons. I try to be grateful and count all my blessings, but heavy is the head that wears the crown. Amen in Jesus' name, yes I declare it. Any little seed I receive, I have to share it. Brothers wanna break me down, I can't bear it. But heavy is the head with the crown, I still wear it. You can't hold me down, I still hold. Rain falling down at the bricks, I'm still soaked. Try to put a hole in our ship, we'll build boats. 2 birds with 1 stone, I kill both. Pray I never lose and pray I never hit the shelf. Promise if I do that, you'll be checking on my health. If it's for my people, I'll do anything to help. If I do it out of love, it's not to benefit myself. Ooh, gotta stay around but make a comeback too. I know my only mother wants her son back too. They're saying I'm the voice of the young black youth, and then I say yeah cool, and then I bum my zoo, and now I'm searching every corner of my mind. Search every corner, look for the answers. Looking for the answers I can't find. No, I can find them, no silver lining. I have my reasons, and life has its lessons. I try to be grateful and count all my blessings, but heavy is the head that wears the crown.
That's great. So you could get the PowerPoint up over there. Excellent. Okay. Have I got control again?
Go.
No?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I'm conscious of the time, and I recognize now, because of the technical difficulties, that I'm not going to get through all the slides. But I do want to ensure that I take us to a place where we can learn. So although I'm not going to go through every slide, because we clearly have to get our head around how we do this remotely, this kind of process remotely. I'm trusting that colleagues will, okay, so once again, Royston, it's gone. I'm trusting that as we get used to this environment, that we will be able to master these processes and do these processes. And I'm going to skip through some slides as I'm talking, but do these processes with people that we can trust, that we question who is going to support us as we go through this trauma again. I've referenced here on this slide and slides to follow some of our journey and some of the things that have been happening in terms of activism in the university that I'm part of and in the Caribbean. I wanted to include a couple of images because these kinds of images trouble me. We have at this top table 3 attorneys who are supposed to be working with us on the idea of reparations. I would want to suggest that they are not working for nothing. I would want to suggest that they're probably being paid. But the image you will see shows that they're being flanked by 2 African men. It's an interesting dynamic that we are faced with. We have to ask who's authorized to act on our behalf and who's authorized to assist us in our healing. If we are faced with people who don't look like us, and these are the lawyers that are available in the Caribbean, some of the lawyers, male and female. If we continue to just presume that Europe and those ones who are guilty of causing us trauma over the years, if we really believe that they can help us, then I would want us to just reflect and ask if the history and evidence so far has demonstrated that when they assist, that we are actually healed. Can we self-repair? Can we use an African-centered model? Can we draw on the strategies of our ancestors and our parents? Can we become comfortable with the idea of chanting and drums and herbs and other things that we have been given, it's been handed down to us? Can we draw on those? Can we feel comfortable? Or do we still have the remnants of a colonial past? I've identified here that women are often among the poorest, and that will lead to their children often being among the poor. But I don't like the term poor. It's economically disadvantaged. That's the term I prefer to use. And right now, in this academic lockdown, we are being told that they are recruiting for adult social care workers. And this is being marketed as an opportunity. And still we are in those economically disadvantaged environments. So I'm going to just go through some of these things very quickly and ask us to be alert. Unfortunately, this PowerPoint presentation used the word alert before the Prime Minister decided to use the word alert. So I didn't get a chance to do something about that, but my question to us is, does this seem familiar, that which is happening now? And are we going to be more vigilant in terms of who we allow to support us in our healing? I'm reinforcing the idea of self-love, and I am challenging the idea that we are by ourselves. We are not by ourselves. We are with ourselves, and we are with our ancestors. We are complete beings. We are complete beings. Even if we're not with the person that we call our better half or our other half, we are actually whole, but in partnership. I want to ramp up the idea of self-love, self-validation, self-determination, community education. And once again, I salute Royston, Auntie Jean, and Patricia, and everybody who's involved in this new forum that we have, this regular place we can go for our education. In fact, it seems to me that in a funny kind of way, this pandemic has created a new opportunity for us to realign, to rewind and come again. You know, we now can meet without having to leave our homes regularly. So I applaud those of us who are in this, and once again I promote the idea of love. Now this next musical interlude will be the last musical interlude, because I don't think we should go through any more slides, but I want us to remember that we are center. So when this plays, you will hear lady, but if it's a man that's listening, you can substitute the word lady with whatever you want to substitute the word with. The idea is that we are in self-love. Royston, please play the track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Excellent. Any image?
Your love struck me down lightning, thunder in my soul, baby. My heart beats for you only. Every word is true. I'm in love with you. Take you as you are, lady. You ain't gotta change for me. Need you from your crown, honey, right down to the sole of your very feet. Girl, my love grows stronger each day, baby, please. Don't hurt me just because you know I'll forgive. Girl, my love grows stronger each day, baby, please. Don't hurt me just because you know I'll forgive. Hold me until we die, weather together the storms of life. It won't always be sunshine, baby, we're blends of imperfection. Oh, oh, oh. Give me your heart and soul, love me like you've never loved before. Beautiful morning.
Okay, if you could just let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, we need to go.
Too far?
Okay, just take it right towards the end.
Down to the end?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I wanted to just acknowledge and give thanks. I won't deliberate on the slides. I hope people will forgive those technical difficulties that we had. And if I'm going to lead us with anything, it is that we can have an attitude of gratitude in this mix. We have, as I said, the opportunity to just realign ourselves, recalibrate, and to show ourselves forgiveness and love, and give ourselves a reference point of majesty and not the ones that are coming from Jesus. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions after that about self-love and what you got from that? Anyone?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation, because it's about you sharing yourself with us, having done so much, you know, and it's enabled me to have a better understanding of you and where you're coming from. And thank you.
Thank you.
Judith, would you ask your question?
It was more of a comment, really, about asking who is healing us, and where are they coming from, not only in terms of their qualifications, but, you know, if they're not from the diaspora, what is their view of us? Because it's often the case where we're kind of very much, our culture is perceived to be the problem, and that they don't recognize our trauma as being perpetuated by them. They feel that we've perpetuated our own trauma. So I think the comments you made before about checking people's credentials and asking actually who is healing us were really valid. So thank you for, give thanks for your presentation.
I'm in dialogue, ongoing dialogue with one who has the reins on health and mental health, and it happens to be a brother. And in our conversations, we're saying to him that our people need culturally appropriate healing and therapists, and he keeps saying, but why? You know, and short of banging his head on the wall, you know, we go over it again and again and again. And unfortunately, he's caught in an environment where he's by himself, and he's been there for some time. So he's had to climatize to that condition as a framework for survival. So he's lost some of his reference to us. And therefore, you know, the system is quite happy to have him in that role. And because they know that he will stop the messages from us getting through, you know, in some way. And I wonder if you have a thought about how we can unpick that little lock.
Right. So first of all, I think that we have to cultivate empathy within ourselves, because even those who are in those positions are experiencing trauma, and all of us came to being woke or levels of consciousness at different stages, and we're still all at different stages. So we do have to recognize those of us who are in certain positions to survive. There's had to be some level of cognitive dissonance, some things they've had to do to protect their own selves. Mm-hmm. However, I think that we do also need to drive home the points that were made, and which are that we have our own sensibilities. Part of being in this work is that we should have supervision. Those of us who are healers or therapists or counselors or whatever should have supervision. Otherwise, we too will burn out. Mm-hmm. We are spirit having an earth experience just because we have been trained or exposed to certain techniques and strategies and all those sorts of things doesn't mean that we should neglect our own vulnerability. So my thing, first of all, is to cultivate that empathy. And of course, you've recognized that that might be a survival strategy for him. Mm-hmm. Many of us have been there. We've been in the system, and we've come to a place now where we said, my goodness, we didn't realize that we actually were part of the system that was causing us damage. Yeah. You know, but even in that process, we have to forgive our own selves and go through our own journey. Mm-hmm. And that may not be easy. Mm-hmm. That may not be easy. You know, we have to recognize that may be painful. And I recommend, if we can find thought partners, or we can have safe people, a safe space. Mm-hmm. We have therapists among us where we can share this safely, because we have to be safe.
Yes.
When all is said and done, we have to be safe.
Chief Montana, I wonder if you have a comment. June, I see you. I'll come to you in a moment, Chief. Chief.
Yes. Throughout the presentation, I just became more and more aware and present to the fact that it's like we pressed the reset button. Well, no, let me back up. Someone else pressed the reset button on us, because as I travel back and forth to Africa, throughout the year, throughout each year, what becomes more and more apparent to me is that there's no such thing as self-love. There's no such thing as self-esteem. There's no such thing as self-confidence, because all of those things are so ingrained in the language. And anyone who knows an African language, you will see the way that we communicate with each other, the way that we communicate with our children. It actually promotes everything that we campaign for in the diaspora. The language, it's in the language. It's rooted in the language. And I just became very present to that. And, we don't have a lot of work to do. I used to say we have a lot of work to do, but I promise you we don't. The only thing we have to do is to return to our tradition. That is it. The moment we do that, we win. Because one of the things one of my elders said to me about a year ago or so, and so we were talking about, I think we were talking about language or something, how to language some of the ritual phrases and chants to say. And he said, the problem with English is that it is a very powerless language. It has zero power. And we fight for it to have power. Because someone mentioned the Queen's English. We fight for that. And when he said that, I thought about it. And I said, everything that we say, if we say a word that represents some type of power that has to move, it is not an English word. It is a word from some other tradition. It could be from some old, ancient European tradition, but it's some word that is not English. Because English is very powerless. Because English is very new. It's not old. And so just listening to the presentation, that just came to mind. Is that self-love is something that was actually stolen from us when our language was taken, because it's rooted in the language. And even when you see how, you go pretty much in every place I've been all over the country, I've been a whole lot of places, but when you see how we greet each other, it is nothing but love, nothing but admiration, nothing but care and concern, grace and mercy. It's all in how we greet each other, all in how we interact. It's there in the language. And so we struggle, I argue, that we struggle in the diaspora because we have no language. We have a language, but we don't have language that is ours. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, but that's it. I don't actually.
Thank you. Thank you. June, you got a question?
You're welcome.
Let's get you unmuted first.
Yeah, greetings everyone. The part I've captured, I have to say thank you so much for that information, because it's allowed me to now recognize that I am not the one that's not right up here, because I've been dealing with those professionals for many years, having a child with so-called inabilities. And every time you go to these people to get the help, they're convincing you that you are in the wrong, in as much as telling me that my child was actually ferile. So all of these things where you're talking about loving yourself, but it's also about having to connect with other people who can help you in the correct way. And sometimes we have to go to people who look like us. Not sometimes we need, but you know, sometimes they are not there. So now having a forum like this, I can now see where I can make those connections. But I also have to pick what's been going on here for many years.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have been abandoned, whether it's by partners or fathers or mothers. And there's a lot of healing. And it starts with self. That's just what I wanted to say. So thank you for that. Oh, sorry. And I meant to also say that I heard you say, even if we're a therapist, but parents who are struggling with these things also need some form of counseling and counsel, and also find signposts for us to get together and, you know, empower one another. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Can I just come back? Okay. Thank you for those contributions. Those contributions are really, really powerful. And one of the things I'm very clear about is that I am still learning, you know. Those of us who are in any kind of healing profession will know that we need to still go back and check or have ones watch over us. I have a website, and on the front page of my website it says English is not my first language. That's the very first thing it says, because we do communicate in ways other than English, because English is inadequate to convey our reality. It absolutely is. And so we stutter, or when we write, sometimes we're not comfortable with what we've written, because what we've written doesn't really convey what it is that happened. When we have trauma, we experience it in a different way. So clearly, for me, English is not our first language. And so thank you for those contributions from everyone. I think, as I say, this forum is a really powerful forum for us to speak our truth and perhaps get stronger and say to other people who are funded and claim to be able to help us, to stop it. You know, we can't all be dysfunctional. We can't all be ill. Surely you just don't understand our culture, and the models that we are trained in don't recognize our reality.
Greetings.
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 Is it all right for me to make a contribution now?
Yes.
To Dr. Sandra. Yeah, I just wanted to, being someone who is learning, and I've gained one or two African quotes and reference points. So I would like to use this excellent opportunity to say Asante Sana to Dr. Sandra Richards. I listened with much interest carefully to the presentation, and I found it very useful, an important learning opportunity in terms of expanding my knowledge on cultural awareness and people development, something that I feel very strongly about as well. So I don't really want to talk too much about Dr. Sandra's presentation that I thought was very, very, very good. I just thought I would mention, though, if you don't mind, Dr. Sandra, that I had the blessing and the privilege to know SisDr from Kechi, and I'm sure she would not mind me bringing it to the attention of the guests like yourself and the chief in Ghana, and all of us that are joining in, Royston and George and so on. I don't know everyone because obviously there's many of us here this evening listening in to Auntie Jean's community event tonight. I know that Sister Nkechi would want me to bring it to the attention of everyone that she was a devoted, a lifelong follower in the teachings of the Honourable Marcus Messiah Garvey. And in that spirit, she was also a member of the Arcabland Revivalist movement. And as a member, I was privileged, as painful as it was, to be in the presence of the membership that gave her a beautiful, majestic celebration of life, passing on service yesterday. And as the goddess that she is, it was most fitting and appropriate for her. So that's all I wanted to say, really, because I saw her name as an individual, along with Brother Dougie, who I recognise also. But Marcus Garvey did say, organise or perish. And that can be in many forms. Ultimately, it's about community unity, but it's just important that I identify that she definitely was a full-time member also of the Arcabland Revivalist movement. And I give thanks for Brother Leader and his wife and the rest of the members that welcomed me so warmly yesterday, because I was very distressed. So it's been amazing listening to you this evening as well, Dr. Sandra. And again, thank you very much indeed for your presentation.
Thanks. I appreciate you bringing the work of the Arcabland Revivalist movement, and there are many other organizations in our community that are doing amazing work. The numbers are far too many, and these organizations aren't just in London. That's the other thing. You know, we as a people are engaging in practices and rituals because we recognize how harmful the Eurocentric system and model is. And there's no doubt, there can be no doubt whatsoever that we are vulnerable if we do not question, if we do not remain vigilant, if we do not satisfy ourselves, if we do not ask who recommended you. You know, we should ask those questions. Even when we need support, we should ask if those that are supporting us are able to, because when we are at our most vulnerable, we need to know that the person who is guiding us is able to do so and not likely to misdiagnose us or to send us somewhere where we're in even more danger. And that's why many of us don't go to some of these agencies, or why some of these agencies just continue, because we have not had the collective that we are creating now. So thank you for bringing forth the sister's name. We must say the name, you know, Nkechi, we must say, I met her. I am very familiar with Brother Van Decker and the family, Nation of Islam, and just so many other organizations in our community. So yeah, give thanks for bringing her name forward and making that point. I'm continuing to learn even as I continue to grow. Give thanks.
Yes, give thanks. Give thanks very much, Sister Sandra. Dr. Richard.
I'm a sister first. It's okay. It's okay. I know. You know what? The interesting thing is, we have been called all kinds of things by people. You know, we've been colored, we've been this, we've been that. In the Americas, they're called another set of names. We have to take our own titles and our own names. So yeah. I am a sister first. So it's always sister first. When I hear sister, it makes me pay attention, because other people are not going to call me sister. I won't have it. So when I hear sister, doctor, I know that I'm talking to my community. If I'm in the university and they call me doctor, it could be anyone. Even when they look like us, it's like, are you a Eurocentric person? Or when I hear sister, I know I'm with my family. So sister first.
Sister doctor.
Even if you leave off the doctor, so don't leave off the sister, please.
Can I just quickly, Auntie Jean, just say to Sister Dr. Sandra Richards and everyone that's part of the meeting here online in Zoom or whatever they call this technology, that if you would like to give your respects and watch and listen to Sister Nkechi's and also Brother Dougie's celebration of life. And as I said, Sister Nkechi was formerly via the community yesterday laid to rest. Then you can go to medianet.com, and both of them are a number of hours, so you may not necessarily want to obviously watch it all in at one time, but certainly it'll give those that are not familiar with either individuals, we're still extended family, to see how the community celebrated their lives.
Yeah.
And yes, I think it's important for me to mention that because, as I said, I was there yesterday, and it was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
And it's important that I give thanks for Sister Nkechi in this medium. Now, in light, especially of what has been said, however, by the chief, it was just important, I think, also to mention the ongoing work of the Akabla Revivalist movement that our blessed Sister Nkechi was a strong member of for over well over a decade.
Thank you very much, Empress Judah. Yes, they did a brilliant job yesterday. They gave her a beautiful send-off. I did watch it, and they did her very proud.
Yes, yes, blessed.
And thank you for bringing it up. And yes, those who haven't seen it, yes, it's the means are still there for you to see, and you can also see it on YouTube as well. So thank you very much. Just a quick roundup with everybody because the time is running very, very fast now. So Royston, do you want to have something to say? Or no, actually, I'll leave you till last. Chief Montana, are you still there? I can't hear. Is he still there, Chief Montana?
He is still there. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I am.
Me, can you unmute yourself? Can you do a quick roundup, please? And yes, you go quick roundup. And if you've got a website, you'd like to mention that too, please.
Yes, I really enjoyed this platform. It's actually a phenomenal platform. I think that, you know, this needs to be duplicated throughout the diaspora. It really does. It's a phenomenal platform.
Thank you.
And just in closing, we're in some very, as we can tell, very unique time. And you know, maybe one day I could give you all the divination results that my elders did back in March to determine why COVID-19 is here. What's its purpose? What is it doing here? And when is it going to leave? Like all the details about it, why it's here. And so maybe I could do that one time. I'd love to actually share that with you all. It's very, very cool, very important information, especially for us to know. You know, it's definitely great for us to know that. Also, just really quick, I do have a website. It is www.chiefmontana.com. It's the website. I'm on Instagram, but I don't do much on Instagram at all. I'm going to start doing more things on Instagram, but it's chief_Montana. I think that's what it is. Yeah, on Instagram. And I have a YouTube page, which is Chief Montana, but I do a lot of talks. Like once a month, I do a talk, but all those things, like none of it is public. So I do a talk and I invite various groups, and it's all hidden there. But I'm gonna at some point start doing more on YouTube.
Okay.
And so that's it. I just enjoy the platform. This is a really, really phenomenal 3 hours or so. It was great. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's all I got. You're welcome.
And
thank you, Sandra.
From Sister Dr. Sandra Richards.
Just to say good thanks again. Sister Doctor is SisDr. Okay, so the SIS is for sister and the DR is for doctor. So Sister Doctor is SisDr, and I'm on Instagram, so you just Sister Dr. Sandra Richards. I'm on Facebook, Sister Dr. Sandra Richards. If you search, you will get my website, which you might find interesting because, as I said, I do speak to that whole English language thing. And it's just been a pleasure to be part of this, and I look forward to being a participant in the future. It is a very healthy and stimulating platform.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. And Royston, thank you.
For me, it's just give thanks for everybody that's participated, Sister Dr. Sandra, on our long journey and reconnecting. Chief Montana, I haven't yet landed in Ghana, I say to my shame. It hasn't happened yet. So it is on my radar to get there, you know. So give thanks for you and for all you brought, and for everyone who's participated here and been here regularly. We'll be back next week, and you know, we think well and intentional of you in this journey. And if you have a recommendation for somebody that can make a contribution, please communicate that to us so that we can give consideration to that. We have a schedule now, rolling schedule of potential presenters. So we're always looking to embellish that schedule so that we bring you the richness of us and what we are and who we are. Sister Dr. Sandra.
I just wanted to say I'm so thrilled that we have Chief Montana, who's on the continent, and that we have a sister who's in Georgia, I think.
Yeah.
That we are actually, you know, as Africans in diaspora and on the continent now making that connection. That has been one thing I think that I have felt is missing when I go to the States. The conversation is very, you know, like Africans in the US, and then you have Africans in the Caribbean. We are in the diaspora and we are strength in numbers. So if we can just make sure that this goes out, and when we say what time it is, make sure we have the different time zones for the various people that we send these things to, so that they can all experience it.
Okay.
Tune in.
You've just triggered me. I've got an inspirational sister in the US who has been a major spiritual guide for me for the last 18 years. So I might just invite her to come and showcase on here. Many people have heard me call her name too, so I'll do that. Reach out. Yay.
That'd be brilliant. That'd be absolutely.
Thank you all. Love you all.
Everybody for tuning in.
Peace.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
God bless.
Good night.
See you next week.
Good night.
It's the Garvey Village. On Sunday we have the African Culture Market, where we have Andrew Mohammed, we have Lady Adele, and also we have Mikhail Amin, sorry. And that is Sunday, the same time, between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock. You can give me a call or look out for the information on the WhatsApp, the Facebook, and the Instagram. My telephone number is 07961886032, and I look forward to seeing you all Sunday. If not Sunday, then next week Friday. Thank you all for joining us for this evening. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Rastafari.